Good morning. We are introducing today a new segment to Your Dreams on Fire, where we'll be talking about money. We'll be providing a variety of different things in the money category. And today we're going to talk about understanding money and just kind of a brief overview of what it means, what you've been taught, what you haven't been taught. And to get started, let me get over to the appropriate screen. So what are we hoping to accomplish today? Our purpose today is to plant some seeds in your thinking to get you started overcoming the conditioned response that you have concerning your financial future. For some, this will be the first time you've seen some of these concepts, so let's get started. So what have you been taught in the past? Go to school, go to college, get good grades, get a good job, buy a house, match the 401k funds that your company is offering, work for 40 years, and then retire on half the money that you were making, or maybe even less. That's what we've all been taught. I wish I'd learned what we're going to cover today 40 years ago. I'll be 65 in just a couple of weeks, and I'm just now starting to understand how to create real wealth. So what's wrong with what we've been taught? Well, you never have time for what you really want to do. Your only asset is your house. Inflation eats away at your savings. You never get to enjoy the appreciation of the value in your house. The fund managers make more money than you do on your 401k. Everything's about work. You have very little leisure. Retirement is then just not working, and it's not really living and enjoying the fruits of your labor. So I've heard it said that your salary is the bribe that they give you to forget about your dream. And for most people, that's very, very solid statement. Most people hate their jobs or hate the thought of having to go to them 5 days a week, and for so many years. And then what about your vacation? You might get a couple of weeks, maybe a few, and in most years, you're not really even able to afford to do anything except stay home. So the question then becomes, how did this happen? Well, the primary reason is government needs tax revenue. We all know that when you get your paycheck, the payroll taxes have already been deducted before you even see your take-home pay. And as you make more, they take more as a percentage. Tax laws are very complicated on purpose. They don't really want you to understand them, because the more complicated it is, the more likely you'll just pay the taxes and move on. And there's no incentive to make more money. Then the politicians use the tax dollars to buy more votes from people making very little money. And how do they do that? With all the giveaways that they give away. Now, none of this is really working to your advantage, and you already know this, because the system is stacked against you. So what do you need to do? You have to step out of the prescribed plan, the go to college, get good grades, get a good job, all of that. So why do you think that the government has become more and more involved in education? It's because they don't want you to learn some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Because if you learn it, then you'll learn how to overcome the racket of going to work and paying the taxes before you even see your money. So let's look at a couple of things that are important when we look at money. Now, a lot of what we're going to talk about today and ongoing is based on the teaching of Robert Kiyosaki. You may know him as the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a very interesting book that outlines the two people that were most instrumental in his understanding of money. One was his biological father, who had a PhD and was a teacher, and he was the poor dad. Dad was the dad of a neighbor kid who, even at age 9, started teaching Robert about how money actually works. And wouldn't it have been nice if at 9 we all got a lesson in how money really works? We'd probably all be in a better place than we are now. So a couple of the things that we want to talk about are some of the financial statements that go into understanding where your money is and what it means. So the first is the income statement. And that is the money coming in And for most people, that's uh, just the wages that they get make for their job. And the other part of money coming in could be the cash flow from the assets that they own. We'll talk about those in just a minute. And then the other part of the income statement is the expenses. So it's money in, money out. Whereas the balance sheet takes a look at assets and liabilities. So assets are things that create cash flow, and liabilities are the money owned against those assets. So two very different things. Total money coming in versus the expenses that pay them. Assets are things that create cash flow, and the liabilities are the money that is owed against them. So let's take kind of a simple definition of what assets and liabilities are. An asset, of course, is anything that puts money in your pocket that's not related to your job. And a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So let's take a look at some types of assets. So it could be a business in which you don't participate your time. It could be real estate that is not your primary residence, and we'll look at that in more detail in just a minute. There are paper assets such as stocks and bonds and mutual funds and ETFs, which are electronically traded funds that are like mutual funds but are traded like stocks instead of like mutual funds. Could be commodities. Oil is a commodity, precious metals. You always hear them talk about soybeans or corn or wheat, all of those things that are grown in the ground that are traded and used in products. Then those can be considered commodities as well. And then there is your intellectual property. The variety of different types of assets, all of which are designed to put money into your pocket. And then there's liabilities. Now, this one is kind of a stretch for some people. Your primary resident is actually a liability because there are expenses that go with it that you have to pay, such as the mortgage payment, the mortgage interest, sometimes mortgage insurance, property insurance, utilities, improvements, all of those things will take money out of your pocket and related to your primary residence. What about your car? Well, everybody knows that's a big expense, and so therefore is a liability, especially if you owe money on it, because you've got your payment, there's interest on that, if it's been financed, insurance, gas, repairs, and then, of course, depreciation. They say that your car loses 25 to 35% of its value as you drive it off the lot. Other liabilities could be your toys, boats, ATVs, snowmobiles, hobbies, all of those fun things. Take money out of your pocket. What about habits? Food, clothing. Those are necessities, sure, but you may have a habit of buying more food than you need, more clothing than you need. And what about Starbucks? My wife knew some guys that when they were in a particular office, there was a Starbucks just down the block, and they'd go 2 or 3 times a day and spend $5 a pop. Well, $15 a day on Starbucks times 240 working days a year adds up in a hurry. So let's take a quick look at mindset and how different types of people look at money differently. So what do rich people buy? They buy assets. So again, assets are things that put money into your pocket. So they'll buy an asset that creates cash flow, and then the cash flow is what they use to buy what they want. So some of the cash flow, they make the purchase, then the asset continues to create cash flow even after that purchase. So they now have money coming into their pocket to buy something else. The middle class buy liabilities. And what might that be? A nicer house, a better car, more toys. And then the poor people have a lower amount of money coming in, so they spend more of it on necessities, but a lot of them just buy junk. If that's their choice, that's okay, but it does help to keep them poor. So we want to change our mindset into looking at ways that we can buy assets so that our cash flow will generate the purchasing power necessary to buy the things that we need and want. So let's take a look at 4 examples of people that I think we will all agree are very rich, and how they got there. You know, once these people started on their path towards mega rich, they didn't have a job. Let's look at Bill Gates. Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, for many years the head. How did he get to the point that he's one of the richest guys on earth, even today, after not working for Microsoft for many years now, working with his foundation to do things around the globe? Well, he started with an idea. That idea translated into products that are on 80+% of every computer in the world. And then Microsoft turned to purchasing new businesses. And why would they do that? Because there were other good ideas out there that they didn't have to create. So their model went from creating products in-house to adding new products developed by other companies that would work in conjunction with the Microsoft products. And so they started acquiring the businesses that made those products and incorporating them into the Microsoft family of products. So they were buying assets on top of the assets that they already owned to create more cash flow and increase their business. Most everybody knows that Warren Buffett is one of the best investors that has ever lived. His company is called Berkshire Hathaway. Their A shares go for somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 or $30,000 a share. But Warren Buffett leveraged money to buy businesses or parts of businesses, which he still does today. So in the trading circles that I am in, we talk often about Warren Buffett's Coca-Cola shares, which he bought probably 40-something years ago when they were less than $10. Coke's trading somewhere $40, $50. I didn't look at it today. But the dividends that come from those shares every couple of years covers the initial cost that he paid 40 years ago. So he bought a good portion of the company at a low price. The dividends today are continuing to build his cash flow with no more initial investment. So he buys businesses, sometimes the whole thing. He owns the insurance company Geico and several others. He owns, I think it's Northern Pacific, but it's one of the rail lines. He just owns the whole thing. Those shares will never be sold because the business is creating cash flow, which is adding to the value of Berkshire Hathaway. You know, one or two people may know the name Jeff Bezos. He's the guy who created Amazon. Today, he might be the most wealthy person in the world. It could be Elon Musk. They're kind of battling back and forth right at the moment. But what would Jeff do? He had an idea to use an innovative idea to sell books on the internet. And for a while, that's all they did. And they sold a lot of books, and it was very successful. But then he realized that he had a marketing system that he could use to sell other people's products through Amazon. So now there are hundreds and thousands of small business owners who use the Amazon marketing system to sell their products. And Jeff takes a small portion of that sale, plus he has a whole bunch of other fees that go with it for the box and for the packaging and for the time that the product was staged in his warehouse. All of those have a value. He charges the companies that are using his marketing and selling system a small percentage or a small flat fee for each of the products that are sold. So he's now leveraged his business model to help other people be successful, and he takes a small portion of that, for which he then has very little cost because he doesn't have any of the product, but he has a variety of points where costs that are passed on to the business owner go into his pocket. And then there's Oprah Winfrey. Again, another billionaire, doesn't really have a job. And what did she do? She branded herself. She became the commodity. First off, she was an on-air personality. That was her first goal. Most everybody became aware of her when she became the host of the Oprah show. And she leveraged her branding into the Oprah Winfrey network, or OWN, which is a multifaceted network that includes all sorts of TV and entertainment and print media and a variety of other things. And she branded herself without a job. She stepped out of that program and became a billionaire. So just a few examples of some people who thought differently, leveraged different parts of the assets that were available. One did products, one did money, one did a marketing system, and one did herself, and they became some of the richest people in the world. So in conclusion, we have to think that there might be a need to change our thinking about money. Everything we've ever been taught about money will not bring true wealth. It was never intended to, because true wealth comes from stepping out of the system, understanding the difference between the balance sheet and the income statement, looking at cash flow to become our income, and stepping away from the program that puts money in the government's pocket first. So we have to understand the difference between real assets, which are those things that put money in our pocket, and liabilities, which are those things that take money out of our pocket. Because in the long run, it's the balance sheet, not the income statement, that builds financial freedom. So then the question is, what do you need to do differently to create generational wealth? And by that I mean the type of money that means that future generations in your family will never be short of money. A lot of different things can happen to do that, but we have to start thinking differently. And it's difficult to overcome years of what you've been taught. I mean, years and years and years. I'm approaching retirement age, and I'm just now starting to really understand these. That's a long time to overcome thinking in this manner. And there may be significant emotional attachments to some of the teaching about jobs and retirement funds and things that are not really assets. So our purpose today was to plant some seeds in your thinking to get you started overcoming the conditioned response that you have concerning your financial future. Now, if you've already determined that you need to do things differently, but you don't know where to start, just let us know in the comments or DM us, and we'll give you some pointers on that. And let us know if you think this has been helpful, and if you'd like to see more about the subject of money, because it's really important to us in the long run to have a good, solid understanding of what money is, how it works, and how we can make it work for us. So that's about all we're going to do for today. Like I said, it's going to be pretty short. I covered a lot of things in a pretty big hurry. Let me get to my other screen here. Stop sharing. So let us know if we can be of help to you, and we will see you next time.